How long you walking through the Gobi Desert here in your body?
Middle of the Gobi Desert, I hadn't seen anyone in days, and I was just looking around. I could just hear this faint noise, almost like a high-pitched humming noise.
Deep in the vastness of the Gobi Desert, rumors swirl about a creature so bizarre, it seems ripped from a science fiction tale. A 6-foot-long beast said to spit acid and shoot electricity. What if all those wild legends were actually rooted in something real? For decades, adventurers and scientists have chased this enigma, hoping to uncover the truth behind the infamous Mongolian Deathworm. Yet, despite countless expeditions and local stories that stretch back nearly a century, no conclusive evidence has ever surfaced until recently. Could the secret to this desert monster finally be within our grasp? What was once dismissed as folklore might just reshape how we understand the creatures hiding in one of Earth's most unforgiving places. The elusive Deathworm legend. The Mongolian Deathworm has haunted the imaginations of adventurers and locals alike for nearly a century. Descriptions paint a chilling picture. A creature up to 6 feet long, shaped like a thick sausage with no legs or head to speak of. What makes it truly terrifying are the claims that it can spit acid capable of melting flesh and even shoot deadly electric shocks at threats. These abilities sound like something straight out of a horror movie, yet stories about this fearsome beast persist deep within the vast emptiness of the Gobi Desert. The worm is said to spend much of its time buried beneath the scorching sand dunes, only emerging during the wetter months of June and July, when the desert briefly experiences more moisture. This behavior makes encountering the creature even trickier, as it disappears just as quickly as it surfaces. Legends describe it as hiding out in the loneliest, most remote parts of the desert, a place few dare to explore for long. Without any clear tracks or signs, the Deathworm has managed to stay out of reach from even the most dedicated seekers. Over time, descriptions of the beast have grown more elaborate and varied. Some say it is fleshy and bright red. Others describe it as scaly in shades of brown or gray. The size itself remains inconsistent. Some claim it is just 1 foot long, while others compare it to the length of a human body. Tales tell of it resembling snakes, caterpillars, or even possessing wings and the ability to fly. This range of characteristics only adds to the mystery and fuels doubts about whether it exists at all. The Deathworm's deadly reputation is a key part of its terrifying legend. Locals warn that even touching it could prove fatal, with venom or acid acting as quick killers. Given these fears, many have been reluctant to actively seek out the creature or bring back proof of its existence. The Gobi Desert's harsh conditions and the worm's supposed powers have made it a symbol of the unknown and the dangerous. Despite this, the allure of discovering something so extraordinary has drawn explorers from across the globe. High-profile expeditions have made the creature a reference point in pop culture, inspiring monsters in movies and books. For example, some speculate the Deathworm influenced the design of the creature in the film Doom. Yet, as exciting as this sounds, no firm evidence has ever been uncovered, keeping the Deathworm locked in legend. It remains one of the most enduring mysteries in cryptozoology, the study of creatures whose existence is unproven. Attempts to find the worm have been marked by frustration and disappointment. Explorers have reported strange noises and fleeting impressions, but rarely a solid sighting. Men who ventured into the desert armed with homemade devices to attract the worm have returned empty-handed, seeing only the silent dunes stretching endlessly before them. This lack of tangible proof only deepens the enigma and leaves many wondering if the creature is simply a myth born from fear and folklore. Interestingly, the gap between terrifying tales and real encounters creates a strange blend of excitement and skepticism. people are captivated by the possibility of a living creature that defies biological norms. Yet, the improbability of its described abilities leads many to dismiss it outright. This tension between myth and reality is central to the Deathworm's mystery. It challenges explorers, scientists, and storytellers alike to search harder for answers while questioning what's truly possible. Despite the many failures to capture or photograph the worm, the legend continues to thrive, especially among local nomads and desert dwellers who pass down stories from generation to generation. These accounts keep the Deathworm very much alive in public imagination, fueling new expeditions and renewed hopes for discovery. However, it is clear that if the worm does exist, it is exceptionally good at staying hidden in one of the world's toughest environments. Before history delivers any final answers, it helps to look back at the early explorers who first tried to shed light on the Gobi Desert's most elusive legend. Their efforts reveal not just the challenges of tracking a slippery creature, but also the power of hope against the unknown. In the shadows of the desert's endless sweep, their attempts to find the monster add richness to the story, hinting that every effort, successful or not, edges us closer to the truth. Early expeditions and their challenges. The first notable Western encounter with stories about the Deathworm came from American paleontologist Roy Chapman Andrews in 1926. He was already well known for monumental dinosaur discoveries in Mongolia, but stumbled upon accounts of a strange creature during a meeting with local leaders. These stories described a worm-like animal, roughly 2 feet long, headless, legless, and so venomous that a single touch could be fatal. Although Andrews himself remained skeptical, his writings introduced the creature to the wider world and inspired curiosity for years to come. Decades later, in July 1990, a group of 4 Czech adventurers set out on an ambitious journey to seek the Deathworm firsthand. They flew into Mongolia, jumped on all-terrain vehicles, and hired guides familiar with the desert's unforgiving landscape. Their goal was to connect local legends with physical evidence by tracking the creature's elusive movements. To increase their chances, they timed their expedition for the wetter months when locals said the worm was likely to surface. Faced with a lack of knowledge about the creature's diet or habits, these explorers engineered a unique device called a thumper. The machine created rhythmic pounding noises in hopes of mimicking vibrations that might attract the worm out of hiding. For 2 whole months, they swept across the vast desert, crossing shifting dunes and rocky plains. Despite their innovative approach, the thumper failed to call out the mysterious beast. The monster's silence only deepened the puzzle. The head of the expedition, Ivan Makarel, was not someone who would give up when it came to the search for the alleged giant Gobi Desert worm. He made multiple trips to the Gobi Desert with different approaches, such as blasting small explosions and at one point, flying an airplane for aerial spotting. And still, the worm was nowhere to be seen. The same fate met the following similar international teams from the USA, UK, and NZ, which often used sophisticated gear and comprised large groups. Nevertheless, all of them came back with no definite sightings or proofs, just scattered stories and unfulfilled dreams as their legacy. In particular, some of the adventurers opted for local expertise as a source of hints, and hence made arrangements for the search through the help of the nomads and the inhabitants of the desert. Flyers providing rewards for information or specimens spread widely, and the local cryptid hunters joined the chase. However, the loud noises that were meant either to scaring the creature or to getting it revealed turned out to have the opposite effect, and were actually driving the creature further underground, blocking the water streams to change the terrain, and thereby luring the worm from the wet areas was not successful since such engineering turned out to be impossible in the desert environment. The aforementioned missions point to the fact that the Gobi Desert itself, being a tough environment, was extremely difficult to navigate and search through. It is such an inhospitable region with the harsh features of intense heat, moving sand, and scarcity of resources. The huge size of the desert is certainly an issue, as there are many open areas where the animal could easily hide from sight. Conditions were so hard that they not only tried the endurance of every team, but also their determination, and it was just like the Deathworm had, in case it was alive, cleverly hidden itself in its habitat by using all the advantages that the habitat offered. The repeated frustrations, however, still led to the learning of the foundational knowledge about the region and its difficulties. The events also contributed to keeping the interest in the mystery of the worm alive, and to the demonstration of the possible extents of human determination in the pursuit of what might be living in that area. This combination of perseverance and yet understanding the Deathworm means also looking deeper into the local cultures that have carried its legend for centuries. How different peoples make sense of this creature shapes much of what we think we know and keeps the story alive across generations. Mongolian folklore and local beliefs. The name Deathworm itself is a bit misleading when viewed through the lens of Mongolian culture. The English term worm likely arises from translation, but in Mongolian languages, the word refers broadly to any animal considered dangerous, especially snakes. This means the worm of legend might not be a soft, squishy creature, as the name implies, but rather a tough, resilient reptile or lizard adapted to desert survival. This cultural nuance challenges common images and suggests a wider range of possibilities. Most Mongolians who know the stories continue to believe the creature is real, passed down through generations as a warning about a deadly presence in the desert. Many accounts emphasize the worm's venomous nature, though local descriptions differ widely on its size and appearance. Sometimes it is said to be as small as 1 foot or as large as a human, with colors ranging from bright red to gray or brown. The inconsistency reflects multiple sightings or perhaps multiple creatures, blurring lines between fact and myth. The folk stories also speak of the worm's unusual abilities, spitting venom or acid, and even unleashing electric shocks, though these traits have no known animal equivalents in the Gobi region. Some speculate these elements may have been exaggerated or symbolic, representing dangers that are hard to describe or understand, but deeply feared. Others view the worm as a supernatural or spiritual being, a spirit without a physical form, adding a mystical dimension to the legends. Local hunters and nomads often regard the worm as part of the desert's hidden ecosystem, passed on as a cautionary tale to keep travelers vigilant. These narratives serve practical functions too. They explain strange noises, unexpected dangers, or unexplained disappearances in a harsh and unforgiving environment. The stories also strengthen a connection to the land and its mysteries, embedding the worm deeply into cultural identity. Interestingly, the widespread use of the word worm for dangerous animals reflects a linguistic tradition extending far beyond the Gobi. It denotes power and peril more than specific biological traits. This helps explain why the creature described in tales may resemble snakes, caterpillars, or even winged creatures with flying abilities. In essence, the Deathworm might represent a category of threats rather than a single species. Despite the absence of concrete proof, the cultural weight behind these beliefs influences how the search for the creature is approached. Scientists and explorers who venture into the desert often respect this folklore as a valuable source of insight, even if they maintain a healthy skepticism. It is a reminder that local knowledge and myths sometimes contain fragments of truth waiting to be uncovered. These stories have persisted even as scientific inquiry has mapped vast parts of the Gobi Desert's ecology and fossils. The local understanding of the worm adds depth to the mystery, blending natural history with mythology in a way that challenges clear-cut answers. It reveals the complexity of interpreting legends through both Western and indigenous lenses. Bridging folk beliefs with scientific evidence becomes crucial when considering the broader context of discoveries made in this region. The Gobi Desert holds a treasure trove of prehistoric life, and what science has found there might explain some pieces of the puzzle, even if the deathworm itself remains elusive for now. The next steps in unraveling this mystery come from exploring those scientific discoveries and their surprising connections to the desert's hidden world. Scientific discoveries in the Gobi Desert. The Gobi Desert is not just a mysterious land of legends. It is also one of the richest fossil sites in the world, offering a window into prehistoric life. Over nearly a century, scientists digging in this harsh environment have uncovered representatives of more than 80 dinosaur groups. The desert's sediment layers tell a story of a time when this barren landscape was vastly different. Once a lush ecosystem, with seas and forests thriving about 71 million years ago during the late Cretaceous period. Some of the fossils found resemble modern birds, blurring the line between dinosaurs and birds and shedding light on evolution. Among the most groundbreaking discoveries in the Gobi were the world's first dinosaur egg nests. Unearthed over 100 years ago, these nests changed how scientists understood dinosaur reproduction, proving for the first time that these ancient reptiles laid eggs rather than giving birth to live young. Over the following years, the same expedition team collected more than 100 dinosaur specimens, many of which now reside at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. Visitors to the museum can see these relics firsthand, connecting us to the distant past. The wealth of fossils and the clarity of the geological record make the Gobi a vital place for understanding life's history on Earth. This extensive prehistoric presence also hints at how creatures might have adapted over millions of years to survive in this region. It raises the possibility that some animals with unique features might have evolved here, or that relics of ancient species could still be hidden beneath the dunes. This context fuels the fascination with the deathworm and other cryptids. Scientists have studied how the extreme environment shaped local wildlife, pushing animals toward burrowing and nocturnal lifestyles to avoid daytime heat. Fossils show the Gobi was once home to swimming reptiles and other fascinating creatures no longer found anywhere on the planet. Knowing this, it's easy to see why some wonder if an unusual animal, perhaps with traits unknown to science, might still roam the desert's isolated parts. The boundary between myth and reality feels a little slimmer in this setting. Despite decades of paleontological breakthroughs, modern researchers have yet to find any direct evidence supporting the existence of the deathworm. No bones or physical remains have surfaced that match the descriptions, nor have any tracks or burrows been conclusively linked to such a creature. However, the desert's vastness and rugged nature mean much remains unexplored or difficult to access, keeping open the slim chance that elusive or undiscovered animals could be out there. The desert's fossil wealth also explains why explorers like Roy Chapman Andrews became so fascinated by Mongolia. His expeditions put the Gobi on the scientific map and indirectly popularized the deathworm legend by sharing the local stories alongside the dinosaur discoveries. Yet despite this prestige and extensive study, the monstrous worm remains unproven, sitting on the edge between thrilling folklore and scientific curiosity. This mixture of rigorous science and enduring mystery creates a unique atmosphere around the Gobi. Researchers must balance respect for local legends with their evidence-based methods. That balance is critical because it highlights how myth and discovery can coexist, sometimes driving further investigations from unexpected angles. Many who study the desert also recognize that the animals most likely behind the monster stories are probably simpler, more ordinary creatures with unusual behaviors. Fossil records and anatomy constrain what species could realistically survive in the extreme conditions, suggesting that even the most bizarre tales could be misinterpretations or exaggerations of what locals and explorers have actually seen. Still, the presence of such a biologically rich and historically significant area keeps hope alive that some answers lie buried beneath the sand. But before drawing conclusions, it makes sense to look at what real animals could have inspired the myth, possibly explaining much of the mystery with concrete biology rather than legend. Long after fossils have been uncovered and science has advanced, the shadows of the Gobi's strange stories continue to linger in the form of real living creatures mistaken for monsters. Misidentifications and real animals. One of the most compelling leads in unraveling the Deathworm mystery comes from the existence of the Tartar sand boa, a chunky, burrowing snake native to the Gobi Desert. This non-venomous reptile has small eyes and gray-brown scales, traits that loosely fit some local descriptions of the deathworm. In one famous story from 1981, a scientist investigating a supposed deathworm nest was allegedly pulled into a burrow, only to find the boa instead. When shown to locals, many reportedly identified it as the monster, highlighting how real animals could feed into and shape folklore. Unlike worms, which are soft and squishy, a creature surviving the extreme heat and dryness of the Gobi would need a hardened body, much like that of a snake or legless lizard. These animals have adapted perfectly to burrowing beneath the sand and handling the environmental stress. This suggests that the worm label given in English to the creature may not reflect its true nature, but rather a linguistic simplification or a cultural shorthand for any dangerous legless animal. However, none of the known snakes or lizards native to the desert possess the supernatural abilities attributed to the deathworm. No verified animal can spit acid or discharge electricity as told in the legends. While some snakes, like cobras, can spit venom, it is not comparable to the acid-melting powers sometimes claimed. This gap between reality and myth leaves room for exaggeration, misinterpretation, or deliberate storytelling to amplify the fearsome image. The hypothesis that the myth may have been influenced by the existence of a number of different animal species, or at least animal variations, is a powerful one. The locals offered various disguise. Some said the animal had wings and was able to fly, while others gave color descriptions going from bright red all the way to a dull gray. These contradictory claims may very well be the result of different sightings being mixed and stacked through the years, turning into one big composite monster. This in turn would justify the inconsistency and, at the same time, reinforce the mystique surrounding the deathworm. Another cause for misidentification is the difficulty in obtaining close-up views of desert animals. The rough environment permitting, the creatures will only be momentarily spotted, which usually happens at dawn or dusk. The holdup of the animals together with the very bad visibility gives way to the imagination filling the spaces in and making up stories. Even the most honest and good-willing spectators might take normal occurrences as indications of something magnificent. Some scientists conjecture that the deathworm is nothing but an over-exaggerated account of an animal that was already feared or respected, for example, the sand boa, and its habitat, along with superstition and the potent desert's demonic influence, have all contributed to this confusion. This idea portrays the monster as a fictional creature produced by the merging of nature and myths, instead of a hidden species waiting to be discovered. Moreover, It highlights how the surrounding culture can turn a common animal into a legend. However, the argument against the existence of a large unknown animal is supported quite heavily by the lack of any physical remains, such as bones or carcasses. If the creature was indeed real and huge, scientists would claim that there should have been the evidence of things like fossilized bones or even shed skins by now, especially in view of the extensive studies that have been conducted in the area. This lack of concrete evidence keeps the deathworm trapped in the domain of cryptozoology, where animals survive mainly on tales and rumors. Yet despite no confirmed sightings, the search continues, fueled not just by curiosity, but by a hope that some remnants of prehistoric or unusual life might endure. This intertwining of fact and fiction persists because the Gobi Desert itself is a place where the extraordinary often feels possible, where dunes cover secrets, both old and new. Whatever the truth, it seems clear that the Mongolian deathworm legend is a tapestry woven from real creatures, cultural perceptions, and the desert's enduring mystery. A story shaped as much by human imagination as by the sandy landscape hiding it all. The next chapters in this enigma unfold as science finally brings new clarity, shedding light on what really lies beneath the Gobi's shifting sands. The myth versus reality debate. The Mongolian deathworm sits at the crossroads of myth and reality, surrounded by conflicting reports that make it nearly impossible to separate fact from folklore. On one hand, local stories recount terrifying encounters with a creature that spits deadly acid and unleashes electric shocks. On the other, scientific expeditions have failed to produce any tangible proof. No specimens, no bones, no definitive sightings, despite numerous searches spanning decades. This stark contrast fuels skepticism among researchers, while keeping believers hopeful that the legendary beast truly exists. Many skeptics argue that the creature is a product of imagination, born from a combination of fear, cultural storytelling, and the intense environment of the Gobi Desert. The wildly differing descriptions, varying in size, color, and even physical features like wings, suggest not a single species but a patchwork of myths layered over time. These contradictions weaken the case for the worm's biological reality, hinting that it may be more of a symbolic entity than a literal animal. Still, those skeptical voices cannot fully dismiss the consistent thread running through hundreds of years of eyewitness accounts and oral traditions. For local Mongolians, the deathworm remains a very real, very dangerous creature. A presence woven into the fabric of their desert life and history. Their firm belief naturally influences the persistence of the legend and encourages renewed efforts to find proof, as the story lives on in repeated retellings. The immense challenges of the Gobi Desert themselves lend a certain credibility to the stories. It is vast, harsh, and difficult to explore extensively. Even today, remote areas remain largely unstudied, providing a perfect refuge for elusive creatures. This uncertainty compels some scientists and adventurers not to reject the possibility outright, but to reserve judgment, acknowledging that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. One striking example illustrating the tension between myth and reality was the 1981 incident involving the Tartar sand boa. When a scientist was pulled toward a burrow thought to house a deathworm, the creature turned out to be a non-venomous snake already known to science. Yet, locals identified this snake as the deathworm itself, revealing how real animals can be mistaken for monsters. This blurring of lines shows how folklore and observed reality often intertwine. Despite that, extraordinary claims like acid spitting and electric shocks remain firmly in the realm of legend, as no known animals native to the Gobi or anywhere else share these traits. Possible explanations include exaggerations over time or symbolic storytelling intended to inspire caution or respect for the desert's dangers. The Deathworm's supernatural abilities may be metaphors for the hazards faced by desert inhabitants rather than factual biological skills. This ongoing debate contributes to a wider conversation about cryptids in general, creatures like Bigfoot, the Yeti, or the Loch Ness Monster, whose existences are hotly contested. The Mongolian Deathworm joins this group as a symbol of the unknown, perfectly balancing between human mythology and the tantalizing hope of undiscovered life. Such stories persist because they tap into a universal fascination with mystery and the unexplored. Still, the weight of decades without physical proof narrows the window for the Deathworm's existence as a giant, venomous worm. Scientific rigor demands evidence, and so far, the evidence has remained elusive. This balance keeps the mystery alive. Part cautionary tale, part unanswered question, and part adventure waiting for resolution. From the shifting sands of myth and skepticism, there emerges another curious mystery that offers a glimpse into the desert's enigmatic atmosphere. A phenomenon born entirely from the natural world, yet sounding almost otherworldly. The singing sands phenomenon. Centuries before modern explorers searched for giant worms, travelers crossing the Gobi Desert reported strange musical sounds drifting across the dunes. Marco Polo wrote of hearing noises like drums or distant voices, which he believed were spirits haunting the sands. These haunting tones, known today as singing sands or booming dunes, still echo across certain parts of the desert, producing deep, resonant notes unlike the faint squeaks of ordinary sand. The phenomenon has fascinated scientists and storytellers alike. Some dunes can create sounds powerful enough to vibrate the ground, rising and falling like a natural symphony. Early theories attributed the noise to wind or underground movement, but not all dunes sing, adding to the mystery. To solve it, researchers climbed the dunes and triggered avalanches by sliding down their slopes. As sand poured downhill, it began to hum, softly at first, then swelling into booming waves of sound that could be felt through the earth. Studies revealed that only dunes meeting specific conditions can sing. The sand grains must be dry, smooth, and nearly identical in size, and the dune must be large enough to amplify vibrations. Beneath the surface, a compacted layer of sand acts as a resonating chamber, bouncing sound waves until they merge into a single powerful tone. These natural melodies likely inspired ancient tales of spirits or monsters lurking below. To a traveler alone in the vast, silent desert, the dunes' eerie voices could easily feel supernatural. Though unrelated to the Mongolian Deathworm, the singing sands share its sense of wonder, a reminder of how nature's mysteries blur the line between fact and legend. Even today, the Gobi's booming dunes invite explorers and scientists to listen closely, revealing that the desert's greatest secrets may be found not beneath the sand, but within its haunting song. As these natural sounds echo across the wind-sculpted dunes, they invite us to listen closely, not only for the secrets of the past, but for mysteries still waiting to be cracked. What science finally revealed. After decades of speculation and exploration, scientific studies in the Gobi Desert have brought new clarity to the legend of the Mongolian Deathworm, though not in the way many imagined. Instead of uncovering a supernatural creature that spits acid or shoots electricity, researchers identified a far more ordinary explanation. The likely source of the myth is the Tartar sand boa, a burrowing snake well adapted to desert life. This finding bridges folklore and science, revealing how local stories often evolve from real but misunderstood animals. Linguistic studies added another layer to the mystery. The Mongolian term translated as deathworm can describe various dangerous creatures, especially snakes, not literal worms. Western explorers, misinterpreting this, envisioned a monstrous worm lurking beneath the sands. The Tartar sand boa's secretive nature, subterranean movements, and sudden appearances likely inspired fear among herders, who recounted tales of deadly powers. While the snake is non-venomous, legends may have amplified its menace over generations. The mystery of the Mongolian deathworm shows how legends and science intersect in surprising ways. While the deadly creature remains undiscovered, the desert's real wonders, from ancient fossils to singing sands, continue to captivate and inspire. If you've enjoyed uncovering this intriguing story, be sure to like and subscribe for more fascinating mysteries from around the world.